do have a quorum. We have two members that will be joining us. Dr. Houlihan will be here for the interviews, and Mr. Rivers will be joining us by phone for the interviews as well. So then we'll have a full board. So we're going to go ahead and start. Ms. Lynn, would you do our invocation?
I will. Heavenly Father, we thank you for the opportunity to come together on behalf of our students, our teachers, our staff, and the administrative team of Granville County Public Schools. We ask that you be with the parents and families of our students as well as the leaders of our communities as we all work together to provide safe, nurturing environments for our children to learn and to thrive. Bless every hand that has a part in their success, and never let us forget that our children and their future are the reason we are here. We ask these things in your name. Amen.
Mr. Udy, if you'll lead us in a pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, everybody welcome. Please remember that because we're here, we have to speak a little bit louder to help with the recordings. So just keep that in mind as we move forward. Dr. McClain, is there any changes to the agenda?
No changes this evening.
Okay, and if you'll give us your report.
Absolutely. Good evening, Mr. Chair, our board members, staff, guests, and friends. Thank you for being here for tonight's work session. There are multiple topics, which is unusual for a work session, but quite indicative of the ever-changing nature of our work this time of year. In your folders tonight, you will find a copy of our school's recognitions, observations, and celebrations for Black History Month occurring throughout our district. I ask you to pay attention to those honors occurring across the district, and please feel free to take time to join the celebrations at your leisure. You will also find information about the up and coming work around North Carolina's My Future NC. This work has direct tentacles for continued collaboration for school districts, community colleges, businesses and industries, and more. The goal is for North Carolina to produce 2 million North Carolinians with high-quality post-secondary degrees or credentials by the year 2030. I'm excited about our district's possibilities and ultimately our role in that work. I'm also excited about our board's work to begin regarding interviewing candidates to fill our vacant board seat tonight. So without any more information from me, this concludes my report this evening.
Thank you, Madam Superintendent.
Thank you.
I'd like to give you my report. There's hardly a day that goes by that we don't see things on the move in Granville County Public Schools. There are been several opportunities over the past week that I've had the opportunity to spend with students and staff. And each time I realize we are all trying to focus on one goal this year, moving the academic needle forward, each in our own own way. As Dr. McClain said, last week we were able to attend the inaugural luncheon for My Future NC in Greensboro. Tonight you have that document in your folder, and the initiative outlines making sure that we have 2 million workers by 2030 with post-secondary education and high-level credentiality, all focused on preparing our students to be a major economic driver in our state. That research shows that we're potentially going to be about 400,000 students short. At our March board meeting, you'll hear more about this work and how it'll play out here in Granville County Public Schools. Also in your folder, you'll find a hard copy of the letter that we sent to the State Board of Education on your behalf regarding the West Ed report and the Landry case. I appreciate the work of Dr. Houlihan, our attorney, and the executive staff for their assistance in preparing this letter. I am, as I'm sure you are, very interested in what more we will hear from the State Board related to these funding priorities. In preparation for the upcoming month, I want to remind you of some important events. On March 14th, our very own Teresa Baker will be honored by the League of Women Voters at a luncheon. If you're able to attend, please let Ms. Pettaway know as soon as possible. There are several items being lined up for our March board meeting, but also our March work session will have several important topics, one being the draft board procedures that you received last meeting. We will also have our mid-year evaluation conversation with our superintendent, and we will finalize our board's training schedule for the rest of the year. In your folders, you'll find information on the Master Board Training Program offered by the North Carolina School Boards Association. Please look this over and be ready to discuss that at the March work session. Last but not least, we have the task of filling a board team for this year's celebration on March 12th being held here at Mary Potter. Please let me know if you're willing to participate on the team, but I would also like to invite you to come and support the Granville Education Foundation, as they are a huge supporter of education here in Granville County Public Schools. I want to remind you that we are here to support the mission of Granville County Public Schools. We are to empower every student every day. As we are committed to excellence and achievement for all, we must keep students as the main focus of what all we do, especially here this evening. That concludes my report, and so we will move further down our agenda. We have a board consent item. Dr. Woodward.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Tonight I have one field trip for your approval. This is the leadership retreat from South Granville High School, and my apologies in bringing this to you at a work session and hard copy, but John Hughes has been out, and this is his baby. We have a teacher from Hawley Middle School who has taken the reins and organized this trip in his absence. So we would ask that this be approved tonight, as it is an overnight field trip to Camp Oakhill.
Board members, you have that information. Because you're receiving it now, do you have any questions for Dr. Lindborn? If not, we would entertain a motion to approve this.
Motion to approve the overnight field trip.
And a second for that?
Second.
All right, so you have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Now we will move on to the interview question development. If you look in your folders, you will have at the beginning of each packet the questions that we utilized the last time we had a board seat that we worked on. So kind of how we want to do this tonight, if you want to take a look at that, if there's anything you want to clarify or change, and any kind of additions, and then we will decide who will ask each one of these questions. So if you'll take just a moment to look over that. Do keep in mind that it's been our procedure and kind of a good best practice is that what we ask one candidate, we ask all three candidates. We don't do individualized questions. Board members, on question number 2, we'd like to make an addition to that question. There's an example there that our first Monday of the month is a regular scheduled board meeting. We'd also like to go ahead and make them aware of the work session that is typically the third Monday of the month, so that they are aware that there are at least 2 scheduled meetings a month.
Can I make a suggestion too?
Yes, ma'am.
Number 8, what is one initiative you would like to see happen during your time on the board. I know when I was in the meeting, that word initiative kind of threw me. I didn't know how else to word that, but if there's any suggestions to change that, because I didn't really understand what that meant.
Yeah, I remember that. Board members, do you have any ideas of how to change the wording on that question? Go.
What is one of your goals?
Go, okay, I just want to make sure. Change, do you think that would work better? One goal, okay? Any other suggestions or?
Yeah, I was looking, I thought a good question to ask would be, could you name 2 qualities that a board member should have, and then have them explain which one they, or do they think?
Do you think that would replace a question or be an additional question?
Well, I was looking to see if there was one to replace, and I don't really see that.
What about for number 4?
I looked to see if there was one close to it, that it could be added to, but I didn't see that.
What about number 4, the second part of that? Could we change that qualifications to 2 qualities and what you possess?
Yes, that would work there.
Okay. So number 4, we're looking at the second part of that question, changing it to say what are 2 qualities of an effective board member and what do you possess?
You list at least, just say that you list at least 2 qualities of a board member. And just say, explain which one, if they explain that, that's.
Any other? All right, what I'd like to do now is let's go through and assign questions to each of the board members. If you remember, Dr. Houlihan will be here. Mr. Rivers will not. We can assign him a question if you'd like. Just keep in mind, he doesn't have this in front of him. So it may not be the best to assign him a question. I guess from the way we have practiced before is the chair typically opens the questioning, so I would take number 1. Does anybody feel strongly about number 2, that they want to take that?
Better you can just go around,
We can do that too.
whatever we follow on this program.
All right. So Ms. Lynn, you want to take that one? All right, so then Dr. Houlihan would do number 3. Mr. Udy, number 4, which falls into your question anyway. Mr. Peace, number 5. I would take number 6. Ms. Lynn, if you would do 7. Dr. Houlihan would do number 8. Mr. Udy, number 9. Mr. Peace, number 10. Then I could take number 11. And then Ms. Allred, if you would take, do you mind taking a third one? You would take number 12. Mr. Udy, if you will help Dr. Houlihan when he comes in, know which ones he needs to do and change that wording on that one, please. All right, any other changes or questions about those?
Yeah, I have a question.
Okay.
At the end, I think we should, keep them out, something that you ask.
Would you be okay if I took that and just closed it out with that one? All right, so those will be the questions. We'll ask for all 3. If you remember, looking at your schedule, we've scheduled about 15 minutes a person. We also have a 10-minute break in between that they can run over into, or we can kind of discuss afterwards if we need to. What the plan is we will interview all 3 people tonight. Afterwards is where we will deliberate. We have 2 decisions to make tonight. We will either choose one of those 3 that have been presented to us, or we will make the choice to close those and reopen nominations for people to come back. we would start the whole process over again if you do not feel those three fit that. So those are the two options before us tonight. There has been some conversation about, do we want to make a decision tonight? I think when we get to deliberations, you certainly can make a motion for that effect if you'd rather not do that. However, we have advertised tonight's tonight, but you do have the ability to move that to our next meeting if you feel like you want to do that. So that's kind of outlined how we would do that. Is everybody okay with that?
Can I ask a question about number 2? Because
Yes, ma'am.
we changed the way that was going to be worded. Can somebody read how that needs to say?
So what I would think is just with, when you give your examples, you're given the first Monday of the month is our regularly scheduled board meeting. The third Monday of the month is our normally scheduled work session. Just making them aware that they're, and you can even throw in there are other activities, but those are the two regular scheduled. All right. There's nothing further on that. We will move, we'll move to our next agenda item. Board of Education committees. In the past, we have used the board committee structure to facilitate our work as a board and to support the executive staff and their teams. This year, I'll be making assignments to committees that mirror and support the work of our assistant superintendents. The purpose of these committees are to provide structure, feedback opportunities, and support throughout the year. The committees will meet only as needed, with meetings being called either by the assistant superintendent of that particular area or the board chairperson. So these are not standing committees that will meet regularly. It's only if those assistant superintendents need support or need work in any way. So these will be the committee assignments we're making today. For finance, working with Ms. Day, Ms. Allred, and myself. For operations, working with Dr. Winborn, Mr. Udy, and Mr. Rivers. For curriculum instruction, working with Dr. Myrick, will be Dr. Houlihan and Mr. Peace. And when we add our last board member, we'll assign them to a committee as well. Again, just to give you an example, budget time's coming up soon. We're not using the district budget committee model because we kind of know what we're working with already. We know what we're asking for. However, when it comes time to start that process, Ms. Day will call that group together to look over the budget resolution. When things come up in the other areas, they'll call on your committees to work on that. And as a committee, you'll provide them feedback, you'll give them support, and then ultimately, if there's something to come out of your committee, you would report at our next meeting. Does everybody seem okay with that? Okay. All right, thank you for that. All right, now we're moving to the exciting world of a budget resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Richardson, board members. I'm very delighted tonight, actually, to be able to bring you a budget resolution. As you know, the state has not passed a budget for this year, but they have authorized us to be on the continuing resolution, which means we're on the funding formulas from the prior year based on our current ADM. So that is what I'm bringing you here tonight. I'm going to just briefly go over the budget process, what this budget is made up of, the actual budget resolution document, local appropriated fund balance, and then some of the major budget impacts that are part of this budget. So the budget process, this is a result of the work done in the spring with the budget proposal that you all are very involved in. That is my roadmap to use as we're developing this budget resolution. So it's based on the funding that we received from the county, our continuation funding from the state, which is based on, again, prior year state budget formulas. And that is based on our enrollment data. We received our enrollment information from DPI at the end of December. They trued up our enrollment and our budget numbers. So that is what this budget is based on. And of course, based on what the state mandated salary and benefit increases for this year, there was a step increase for teachers, not a raise, not an additional raise, but there was a step increase approved as a mini budget bill. So the actual budget resolution document, so in board docs there's this presentation, but then there's also a document that is the actual budget resolution. And so this budget resolution is done the way that we've done it in the past, and has revenues and expenses by purpose function for each of the 7 funds. The largest fund is the state fund with a budget of $51 million. The total of all of this, all of the funds, is $92 million. And so the chart on the next page shows how that breaks out in type of expenditure. You can see that the lion's share of our budget is salaries and benefits of our people, with the blue section. Then our operating $14.4 million, capital outlay $11.2, and then transfers and others $3.1 million. That is the major portion of that is the funds that flow through Granville County Schools to charter schools, is that green section of the budget. So that, in comparison to the next chart, is what the 18-19 final budget looked like. And you can see similar in percentages, in amounts. The capital outlay, the amount that we have budgeted is, when we received that $15 million from the county, we had the whole $15 million budgeted when we first received it. Now, as we've spent some of that, the next year, we only budget what we have left that has not been spent, so that number has come down. And that's a difference when you look at the 2 charts. The next part is talking about, so looking at local fund balance, which is always a topic of conversation. So as part of the budget proposal process, the board approved using the $257,516 in fund balance, and that's what this budget resolution is based on. And so if you look at the next slide, 18-19, we had budgeted $955,770. That was a number that was talked about a whole lot. So this budget, rather than the $955, that has come down to the $257,516 based on the decisions that have been made. And that is the amount of fund balance that, when the auditors presented their report, that was the amount of fund balance appropriated that we were anticipating using. So the next slide just kind of shows you where we're at with fund balance. That audit showed our local fund balance at $6.2 million, and with that use of $257,000, we had an estimated fund balance of $5.9 million. But again, when Dale Smith from the accounting firm presented, those were the figures that he had, that he was reporting on, was the use of $257,516 in fund balance appropriated. So the 2 things the main things that are impacting this budget are our student enrollment and then our salary and benefit increases. So looking at the student enrollment, I got it in different colors. The yellow is the student enrollment from 18-19, how we were funded in 18-19. So we were funded at $7,511 as our initial, and then we were reduced for 66 students. So our net funded ADM for 18-19 was $7,445. The column all the way to the right, 19-20, that's what we have been funded for in 19-20, which was initially $7,381. New and growing charters, we were reduced for 19 students, and then a reduction for declining ADM. When I mentioned that we got that information at the end of December, that's what I'm talking about, that we received how many students we would be reduced for and how much funding was associated with that. So that was 67 students. So our net funded ADM, $7,295. And then in the middle, the gray column, I just wanted to show you what we had projected back in the spring as far as our enrollment. And you can see we're pretty close, a little bit better than what we had budgeted for back in the spring, but pretty close to that number. So the other major factor in the budget is the state mandated increases. And so as I mentioned, the state did provide a teacher step increase as a mini budget bill, and so that was an average of about 1%. The retirement rate, there is an increase of more than 1%, And then for the increase in the health insurance per employee, 6,306 versus 6,104. So that is an impact of this budget resolution. I know that was kind of quick, but I'll be glad to take any questions.
Do you have any idea, will they true up any more numbers until they pass a budget, or?
We could potentially receive additional allotments, it's something, if, depending on, for different reasons, but I don't anticipate any additional reductions.
Okay.
So and the other thing that happened, based on this timing, is that in January, they came back and we kind of anticipated that maybe we would have a budget at that point, but so now that they did not pass a budget, we needed to move on with what we had.
So moving into next year, because it's almost budget time, will we just use these same numbers and make that work?
This is our best guess.
So are you saying your best guess is that we're not going to lose any more kids to charge?
Well, that'll be the baseline. We'll start with this budget, but then we'll adjust for things like,
But that's not your best guess.
No. We'll use the historical.
I do the calculations that I've done in the past to look at. They're projected, and what I've done in the past is look at our projected ADM. DPI provides our projected ADM, but then I also look at the projected ADM for the charter schools to see what that is and what our historical percentage of that charter school is.
Board members, what other questions do you have? Okay, I believe you have a resolution for us tonight.
Yes, so, you have a copy of the resolution is on board docs. And again, it includes what we just discussed. It is that total budget of $92 million. It budgets each fund. At the very end, it's got some stipulations associated with the budget resolution, which are the same as have been placed in the past.
Once this is passed, say we pass it tonight, is this then sent on to the county commissioners?
A copy of it.
All right, board members, so you have a resolution in front of you tonight. Ms. Day is requesting action on, and so if you are ready to entertain a motion, we will do that.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion that we pass the resolution that you presented.
Do we have a second for that? All right, so I have a motion by Mr. Peace, a second by Ms. Allred to pass the resolution as presented. Is there any further discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye. All those opposed? All right, motion carries. Thank you. All right, board members, with your permission, if you remember, we talked about that we have a hard stop time for 6 o'clock for the interviews. What the superintendent and I would like to do is to move the Mary Potter agenda item to our March board meeting, which means we would remove that now and then we'd allow Dr. Winborn to proceed with calendar. Are you okay with that? Dr. Winborn?
Thank you, Mr. Richardson. Board members, I have a hard copy. Mr. Granville's great. Came up to bear for me when I realized we might have a technology issue, but this is also going to be displayed on this screen here. This is a presentation that I gave at the kitchen table conversation. Was it last Thursday, Dr. Blake? And we had a very good turnout that evening. I would estimate that there were 60 or 70 people there. And one of the topics was the 2020-21 calendar. Dr. McLean gave a nice preface to the discussion, explaining that we in fact had our 2020-2021 calendar prepared back in December, and we were going to bring it to the board, but there was a hesitation because of things we were hearing across the state with regard to calendar options. And so she tasked us with doing some investigation, and we discovered an additional option. And so that's the heart of what this presentation is about tonight. So the desired outcomes, of course, are to choose a calendar which best serves the needs of students, keeping them at the heart of our decision-making when it comes to this calendar. We also want to make sure that we are fully compliant with calendar law, and I'll talk about that in just a minute. We also want to try to build consensus with all of our stakeholders, and we certainly had a wonderful representation at the kitchen table conversation. Students, parents, community members, employees, a nice broad mix. And we've since issued a survey, and we've had almost 900 responses, I believe, and I'll share the results of that with you tonight as well. So I first want to just give you a brief update on calendar law, so you'll have some background knowledge there. For the traditional calendar, there are some very specific restrictions, and you can see those bullets there. I won't read all of them to you, but it's very specific about the start and end dates, which hems us in. And then, of course, we also are dictated the exact numbers and types of days that we have to plug into the calendar. So by the time the calendar committee takes an attempt at making this work, you do not have a lot of flexibility when it comes to planning a traditional calendar. I think a lot of people are very surprised when they sit down and they go through this process just to see how few options you have when it comes to planning our calendar given these restrictions. The law does, however, provide for some exceptions or waivers. The first bullet is if you're a school district with a history of inclement weather, like a lot of inclement weather, typically these are the mountain counties out west, then you can get a waiver. You get 8 days per year or more during 4 of the last 10 years. We, I guess fortunately, have not met that threshold, so we've never been eligible for a waiver due to the weather. There is a provision which allows for changes to your opening and closing dates if you have a year-round calendar. And I'll talk more about that in just a second, okay? And then finally, there are 2 other exceptions, either for charter schools and low-performing or restart schools. And neither of those bullets apply to our district, because this is a district-wide calendar, not a calendar for any one specific school. So really, highlighted there, year-round calendar is our only option for doing something other than a traditional calendar. So, it begs the question, what exactly is a year-round calendar then? Well, interestingly enough, there is no specific definition given by the General Assembly or DPI. And we've checked, and some of our other superintendent and boards of education have inquired, and they've checked. So it doesn't lay out the definition of what a year-round calendar is. But we know kind of what people mean when they refer to it. Typically, you just take the same number of days and you spread them out. And you do usually intersessions, a shorter summer, and then intersessions or blocks of time between each quarter. Sometimes it's called a balanced calendar too. And as you all know, we've had year-round calendars at 3 of our schools this year. We do currently have them. At our Butnerston Elementary, Butnerston Middle, and West Oxford, we have year-round and traditional together on one campus. This is just a graphic. You've probably seen this before. It just shows the red, meaning the time that students are off, blue, the time they're in school. So the one on the right is the traditional calendar. And the one on the left is sort of a common balanced or year-round calendar. But what I want to make note of here with this diagram is that a year-round calendar could also be something in between. It doesn't have to be the one on the right or the one on the left. It could be a hybrid of sorts because, again, there's no definition, no strict definition. So what we have proposed are 3 different calendar options for your consideration. The first option is the traditional calendar. It looks very much like this year's calendar, okay? And if I could ask you, Ms. Day, to pass these out so that you have these. Traditional calendar looks very similar to the one we had this year. Pretty much the same start and stop times, same sort of lengths of vacations. You know, the days of the week fall on different dates, of course, but basically it's the same type of calendar as this year's. Option number 2. Option number 2 has the same start and stop dates as number 1, but the big difference here is we've tried to end the first semester before Christmas. When Dr. McLean has met with her student advisory groups, and even her parent advisory groups, we heard loud and clear how difficult it is on our high school students who go home for Christmas for 2 weeks, and they come back, and then have to take their exam. You know, it's very difficult, and it doesn't seem to make a lot of sense to them. So option number 2 ends first semester before Christmas, and then second semester starts right after Christmas. The problem is this one is lopsided. In other words, the number of days in the first semester is about 80, and the number of days in the second semester is about 100. So that creates another set of issues. The last option is called an innovative year-round calendar. Okay? This is very similar in structure to number 1. But it has different start and stop dates. And I'll show you in just a second. So if you'll look at the handouts that Ms. Day just gave you, option number 1, you'll see first day of school is that last week of August, and then typical vacations, and the last day of school for the year is June 10th. Okay, that's very similar to what's happening this year. You can see I've listed some pluses and deltas up there. Number 1, the positive is that it's familiar, it's traditional. The deltas, of course, are exams are after Christmas. It makes it difficult for our high school kids. It's very restrictive. You know, it's difficult to plan professional development, work days, early releases. You just don't have much flexibility at all. Also, it pushes our graduations very late in the year. And it's not aligned with our community colleges. And more our high school kids are taking advantage of community college courses. And, sorry about that. Taking advantage of our community college courses so that our semesters aligning with theirs would be a huge bonus. All right, so look at calendar number 2. All right, it's the second page. This has the same start and end dates as the traditional. Exams, though, would be before Christmas to accommodate testing. And that, of course, would help the alignment with advanced Granville. But some of the deltas or drawbacks would be that the semesters are lopsided. It's also still very restrictive, and our graduations are still late. So, this brings us to calendar option number 3. This is called the innovative year-round calendar. Take a look at the start and stop dates. Basically, in this calendar, you would take the traditional and start it 2 weeks earlier and end it about 2 weeks earlier as well. So school would start for students on August the 10th. They would finish first semester before Christmas break. Then there would be an intersession right after Christmas break. That would be an opportunity, a perfect opportunity for remediation or enrichment activities, camps, whatever we wanted to have in that short time right after the holidays. Students would then come back on January the 11th, and they would resume second semester. And they would have a spring break, and then they would finish right before Memorial Day. Then following the work days, there would be more intersessions for our students to do remediation or enrichment or camps. Now, something I want to point out about intercession is that those I's on this calendar, they are not part of our 10-month employees' contracts. So that's not, those are almost like no days for our teachers and teacher assistants, those employees. We would be contracting with them as additional duties or extended employment if they were willing to work for us during those times. So here is a slide with all of the school districts that have adopted this innovative year-round model. And those are just the ones that I can find in a quick internet search. So this is quickly gaining popularity across the state for a variety of reasons. So again, these are the three things we wanted to have in mind when thinking about our calendars. We wanted to find a calendar which best served the needs of our students, remain compliant with calendar law, and would build consensus with all stakeholders. Now, regarding the consensus with stakeholders, we did an activity at the kitchen table conversation workshop, and these were the plus deltas that were recorded at the tables by all of our stakeholders. And so there are 3 pages. It's the pluses and deltas for each of the calendars. So you can see what was written at the meeting. I'll give you just a minute to look at that. It's sort of mirrored what was in my presentation for the most part. I would especially draw your attention to the third one about calendar 3, innovative year-round. A lot of pluses popped up in there that I hadn't presented, including drawing more teachers to our county, lower burnout, better elective changes, more opportunity for enrichment, makes sense for kids, and more opportunity for inclement weather. Following the kitchen table conversation, we issued a survey, and the survey, if you didn't get a chance to see it, basically had an embedded video of me giving this presentation. It was just like a screencast, so people could kind of understand what the options were. And then there was one question at the end that asked them to rank the 3 calendars. Put them in rank order. What do you like? What's your first place? What's your second place? And what's your third place? Everyone get a copy? So the blue bar represents the first choice. The blue bar represents the first choice. So far and away, calendar option 3 had the most first choices by almost 2-1. More than 2-1, actually. There were over 900 respondents. A different file. 559 chose calendar number 3 as their first choice. 263 chose calendar 1 as their first choice. So more than double. Also, interestingly enough, is calendar 1 had the most third choices. 361 as their third choice, as opposed to 300 for calendar 1. So not only did more people prefer option number 3, but they chose it as their least favorite compared to 1. That makes sense. There were a lot of comments because I also asked an open-ended question, do you have any additional comments to add? So rather than print these, because it would have been a lot of paper, I have this available electronically and I'm sharing it with each board member so that you can read through them. A lot of thoughtful comments in here on both sides. So that concludes my presentation, and I'll turn it back over to you, Dr. McLean, and Mr. Chairman, to maybe share some of what happened that night, too.
the attorney wanted to add to this.
So, I do need to tell you that I cannot tell you with certainty that this, for the innovative year-round, is compliant with the law. As Stan said, there's no definition of year-round school in the law. I believe that DPI, if consulted, would tell you that they don't think this is it. Certainly, this many districts have adopted it, and that's definitely true. So you just run a risk that, certainly an argument can be made, but you do run a risk that, because the General Assembly has passed legislation requiring that every school district report their start and end dates by April 1st, and that those be reported to the General Assembly with the statutory exception that you're using. So they are tracking this, and you do run a risk that the General Assembly will invalidate this when they come back. In which case, you might think about just defaulting to the regular calendar that you, or whatever your second choice is. But I think all the districts who are doing this, and the more they're doing it, the more the General Assembly is noticing, and so there is some risk that you figure that there could be some sort of slap on the hand, I suppose, or some sort of legislative action to clarify what a year-round school is. So that is all to say, I think if you adopted the innovative year-round, you would report to the state board that this is your start and end date, and it's because your schools are year-round, and we'll see what comes back.
Do you want to add something?
No, not at all. It was a very interesting evening, but the round of applause I thought was the most intriguing of the evening. It was quite a surprise.
So board members, this is presented to you tonight as information. The plan is this will be brought to you again at the March board meeting with action, a recommended action. What I would suggest is kind of look over it. Stan will be sharing this information with you. I would encourage you that if you have suggestions or you have people forwarding you suggestions, that you get that to Dr. Winborn's office so that they can continue to massage that information. But be prepared in March that we will discuss this for action. Yes, ma'am.
So this calendar is being suggested for all our schools, and we wouldn't have the 3 off.
Correct.
Okay.
And if you remember correctly, we gave you some information about year-round schools last meeting, and again, that will be brought to you in March as well for action on whether we'll continue the year-round program. And so, yes, all of our schools will be unified under this one calendar, with the exception of early college. It would still follow Vance Granville.
Yes, sir. The question that sort of came to mind for me is, why is it called innovative? Why not just be called a year-round college? I mean, there's no definition for it. So, I mean, we're sort of creating something that the General Assembly is going to find a reason to put a
Stop.
define it.
Dr. Whitmore, is there any kind of reasoning behind that name?
It was suggested to us by other districts that have gone through this process to call it either innovative or flexible year-round, I guess, to differentiate it from I won't say traditional year-round, but a year-round that has longer intersessions.
And that's my concern, because right now there is no definition for year-round. So why does it have to be just one person thinking of one?
Is it kind of waving the flag to say, look at us? So maybe that's something we consider. Yes, sir.
If I could add one point, Mr. Pearson, I agree that's a good to point that out. I do think that if we are going to implement a different calendar, there is a lot of education we need to do. And you'll see, if you read through some of these comments, I think sometimes members of the public actually think that year-round means that you're going to school more often, that you're going to go all year, all around, you know. And so we need to let everyone, even some of our staff members were uncertain about, does this mean I get the same salary and I have to work more? No, it's the same number of days, it's just divided, spread out differently.
Which brings up the other question that I have. Does it cost more to then?
I believe the way you explained it would align with our existing financials where the other year-round didn't. It did cost us more to do the other year-round.
It should not, but I'm with Stan. We're taking this opportunity to do some homework, to do lots and lots of homework.
So if we adopted this calendar, the number 3, when would the 21-22 year start? Is there, I mean, how long of a summer break?
Trying to
do they
think.
have?
So
It would be the August of the following year as well.
that middle of August.
That's second week of August.
But the first, if we switch, when the first time you switch, it makes everyone's summer feel a little shorter.
Yeah.
But and the next time, if we stick with this calendar, it'll get everybody on the right schedule. But specifically to your answer about costing us more, it's still 215 days that we contract with our employees. And that includes all student days, all work days, all holidays, and annual leave days. So it's still 215 days.
And it would just be an additional cost if we employed somebody during the intersession.
That was my question. And we had some question around that at the kitchen table was, how would that work? And it would strictly be voluntary on a contract basis. So again, if you'll take this and study this, any kind of questions you may have, send those to Dr. Winborn, and then we'll discuss this more at the March board meeting. So we are right about the time where we need to be for our interviews. What I'd like to do is make one more agenda adjustment. If we can move our next facility update, 3.08, to after our interviews, after the House Bill 75 required reporting. So we'll do that last. Dr. Winborn, if you're okay with that.
Yes, sir.
And what we will do is we will take a about 7 or 8 minute break. If you need to use the restroom or get ready for our interviews, we'll set up for our interviews so we can start at 6 o'clock. All right, so we will take a break. We're going to go and get started. Thank you so much for spending time with us today. How we'll do this. We have several questions we want to ask you. Then at the very end, you'll have an opportunity to maybe have other comments, or ask us questions. So be at ease. If there's anything we need to repeat, or you can explain by all that means, please ask us. About 15 minutes. So if you will, tell us your name and why you want to serve on the board, and then I have a follow-up piece to that piece.
My name is Casey. I'd like to serve on I'm already very active member in quite a few of your schools. I have a passion to see school potential by yet, still being a caring individual. I would like to see more all systems and
We're working on it. Mr. Rivers, you right back and give us just a moment. That sounds great. Thank you. Sorry about that.
Hey, there you are. I'm gonna put you on speaker on my cell phone. Hopefully you'll be able to hear her.
All right, thank you. I'm sorry to be in trouble.
Hello, how are you today, Mr. Rivers?
Loud and clear, yes, sir. Great, thank you.
All right, thank you much. All right, as your question, my name is Miss, and why would I like to start on the school? I like to be more involved, all children, not just my own, not that we have to look at. Every child is rather committed, and I'm hoping maybe more impact to being more aware of things with three. And different, I try to do the right thing, but I feel that I was in here more, I would be able more transparent, come and ask me. You're, okay. As I said, I feel like I would be more influential to the parents. I have a lot of parents that I am so much of the school, so much. Are we out? When is the next meeting? And one parent comes in, they will literally say, Miss Taylor, can you call the school? It's not a problem. I really do enjoy being there with even the high school. Because I kept talking there, and it's good to know that they can trust.
So the board has two purposes, to do policy and to hire and fire the superintendent. That's really our only job. How, with your involvement in the school system, how would you see moving from being very involved like you are to a board member position because of only having those two roles?
I can only have one or the other, is that what you're saying?
Yes, pretty much.
Let me just ponder that,
Okay.
because I understand the test proctoring being that I would be a board member.
And you can still do that. kind of
Okay,
thing.
well, I mean, board member, I volunteer on field trips, so I'm not sure which ones might interact with that, but if I apply for something, I plan to put my full effort potential into it.
That's all.
Question number 2 is, are you able to commit to the variety of meetings and activities of the board? For example, the first Monday of each month is our regular board meeting. There are also work sessions and other activities throughout the month.
Yes, ma'am, and I've taken the liberty of looking into the different videos that y'all have posted of all the different school board meetings to make sure that I was pretty up to date with Project Arrow and different things that were going on, having their follow committee and the time that I would need to be here and to be a positive role model the best I can.
Dr. Houlihan?
Yes. Why do you want to serve on the board? What really brings you? You mentioned students. What else are you really interested in terms of serving on the board?
Number one is our students. Number two is honestly our parents are not as educated about what goes on here. With all due honesty and respect to each and every one of you. I came and had coffee with the superintendent and learned of different graduations in winter time. And I really believe that we should be communicating more with our parents and finding other ways other than email, because not everyone has access to that. School security. I volunteer a lot. I have a sticker that sticks on me and it falls off every 5 minutes. I believe some kind of lanyard or something should be put around the necks so that teachers and students can recognize with whom they feel safe with and who has clearance for background.
Ms. Yu?
Ms. Taylor, I have a three-part question, and I'll just ask them one at a time. The first one is, what do you hope to bring or add to the board by beginning of 22?
I'll try to analyze all these questions prior to coming back. I believe I will bring, I'm trying to find the most good words for me, enthusiasm. A particularness for the students to make sure that if we say we are going to do this for them, we will follow through. I know there's budgets, I'm very well aware of that and what we can and cannot do in the school system according to how much budget we have. But the parents would be more understanding if they understood where the budget was going and what have you. So the transparency and honestly,
second part is list 2 qualities of a good board member, that a good board member should possess.
Assertiveness and trustworthiness.
And can you tell us which one of these you possess?
Mr. Taylor, what do you see as current changes facing the Granville County Public Schools?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
What do you see as current changes faced by Granville County Public Schools?
What I see is current
Challenge.
challenges. The fact that we need to keep more kids in school, we need to keep them more interested, and we need to do all we can to get these parents more involved, because if the parents are not more involved, they don't know what's going on with these students. They don't know what they need to be working on, so that we can all work in collaboration. So, the teachers are doing an amazing job. I don't see a lot of challenges, except for the fact of the school calendar, when it starts, when it finishes, the amount of days we're allowed to have, which holidays we choose to celebrate. Of course, that's going to be challenges with any parent or what have you, but I actually think they're doing a pretty good job.
Can you explain your passion for children and their education?
I only have like 15 minutes, so I keep it short and sweet. My oldest daughter has autism. My middle son has ADHD. I have dealt with IEPs for the past 15 years. I understand every student does not learn the same. And we should be kind of considerate to that and understand that it may not be common core. It may not just be one or the other standardized. But these kids truly need someone that they can look up to, that they know. And the teachers do this already. I see it in Holland. I see it at South Granville. I see it at Wilton. If I'm at Charter River, it doesn't matter what school I'm at. I really see these kids. They run up and hug the teachers first thing in the morning. And that literally, I start my day off volunteering, opening the car doors, because the hugs are better than anything you can imagine. Miss Missy, can you help me with this problem? I'm teaching a child to do addition, so for later in life, they can excel without having dependency upon others. They need to learn to be dependent upon themselves and responsible for their actions.
What, if any, previous contacts have you had with the Board of Education board members?
I have met y'all on several different occasions. I have addressed y'all last year during the award ceremony when I got the award for Wilton Elementary for Volunteer of the Year. Concerning the 60% being acceptable. Other than that, I don't have no kind of interaction with them except on the night of excellence, and Miss Dr. McLean issues my sons and daughters stars for perfect attendance for days, because I'm not setting my standards low.
Dr. O'Leary?
Yeah. What is one goal you would like to see happen during your time on the board?
Well, being the fact that Mr. Mims was elected in 2014, and it's a 6-year tenure for what I understand, so there'll be approximately 1 year left, so I can't say 100% graduation rate, because that is not even feasible in a year. But a higher graduation rate and a higher academic level as far as their testing and what they're coming out with. And if I could implement the student coding project, I would, but I understand budgets.
Thank you.
What do you see as the relationship between the board and the community?
I believe that there could be more hands-on, that not everyone can make it to a board meeting on a Tuesday night because they're at home getting dinner ready. They're at home doing homework with their kids, or most of them should be. So it's not easily accessible. When you go on the website, which I assure you I have been scrolling vigorously for the past week and a half. It is difficult to find information. It is difficult to find the videos, which ones are live feed. When you put the link up to take the survey for the schools, the first one did not work. The second link they put up did work. I just don't feel that we don't feel that we're able to communicate as well as we don't. Y'all are the leaders that take care of our whole school system. And honestly, I'm not quite sure how much time you participate in the schools, but not all teachers, not all students are excelling as much as we might think. Unfortunately.
What do you see as the role and relationship of the board and superintendent?
Are you asking how Phyllis, you and the superintendent interact? Or?
Yeah, the relationship between the board with the union.
Right. I believe that I would say it in general. But what I have seen is something about and all work in collaboration. But all I'm seeing, that's just for what I've seen. Unfortunately, I'm not able to do an active, I haven't seen it as myself. I cannot say that I'm a well versed in how y'all interact with us, to be honest.
What is your vision for education now and in the future?
My vision is to have every student graduate high school with straight A's. We know that's not realistic here, but if I had a realistic goal, we would have at least an 80% graduation rate with an average of at least an 80% on all classes. That would be my goal.
How best does the board support the vision of Granville County Public Schools and the work we are doing to help our children achieve their goals?
To the knowledge that I have, I believe y'all are spending the budget appropriately. I have seen the inside of South Granville and their ventilation system, which I want to tell you looks amazing. They did a wonderful job on it. I believe that we're getting the resources that we need in each school. I believe y'all are communicating and doing a lot of teacher training days, which is keeping our children up to date with the changing times. If we don't have the teacher work days for them to go and take these classes, I feel like they would be falling behind. But I do believe that's the money being well spent by all means.
Is there anything else you would like to add or questions you would like to ask us?
Honestly, I don't have many questions. I mean, I know there will be duties that would entail as far as a board member. I understand there will be times where you come in just for sessions all day, and I am absolutely fine. I love education. The more information you throw at me, literally I thrive on it. Because the more informed I am, the better decisions I can make for everyone around me. And working with a team, I can only imagine the goals that all of us working together could accomplish.
Just one quick question. Do you have kids at Creedmoor Elementary or at Wilton?
Have one at Wilton, yes.
Okay, and you work at Wilton?
No, I do not work. I only volunteer.
I mean, you volunteer at Wilton.
Yes,
Do
sir.
you volunteer at Creedmoor Elementary?
Only when they need reading,
Okay, okay.
which I'm on the volunteer tracker, so if they need something at one school or another, if I can, I try to jump in where I can.
How old are the rest of your children, and are they students in Granville County Public Schools?
I have one who just graduated from South Granville last year. She's 20. She's at Kitchell Job Corps, obtaining office administration. I have a 17-year-old at South Granville, a senior. And her grades are on point as of right now. I have a 14-year-old that is at Holly Middle, but he's about to become appointed into a Viking next year. And I have a 7-year-old at Wilton that's in second grade. And even though I have 4 children, I have a very supportive family and team, and we all work together to be able to accomplish. Like if I'm here, he was taking them where they needed to go. So I do have a good support system to be reliable.
Anything else for us?
I do believe that's all, sir.
Ms. Taylor, thank you for your time. The board will continue with its interviews and will deliberate after a while in this meeting, so.
That's fine. One other question. When you propose I would hear positive or negative, like within the next week?
So the goal is for us to make a decision tonight.
Okay.
However, I mean, it could be the March board meeting, but our goal is for tonight.
Okay, I just want to make sure if there's a meeting on that second, that I have it on the calendar, and I'm going to just go ahead and reserve the date, being proactive there. I'm sorry, we know we have to be careful using the 7 habits.
Either way, you'll hear something from us in the morning to let you know how the rest of the night went.
That would be fine. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to me,
Yes,
and
ma'am.
you have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Very
You're
much.
welcome.
Board members, our next interviewee is out in the lobby, and so we will get him. So if you'll just take a couple minutes to get yourself together, and we'll be ready for him.
You're okay. Gotcha. We've got it as close as we can afford. Hold on one second. Yes, yes. Hold on one second. So, the second candidate is just coming in. If you'd like to move it to the front beside him or divide it up. It's the same questions.
Mr. Anderson, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us tonight and for putting in your request to possibly join our board. We appreciate your interest. So how tonight will go is about 15 minutes worth of questions. We'll go around the table with the board asking several questions. At the very end, we'll give you an opportunity to ask us questions, or if there's anything you want to say. So at the end, we'll have that. At any point, stop us if you have questions about something someone said, or if you want further clarification. We do have a board member that is participating by phone, so that's what that's there for. So, all right, so board members, are you ready? Okay. All right, so I'm going to start first. If you tell us I've got 2 parts. If you tell us your name and why you want to serve on the Board of Education.
Well, my name's Ernie Anderson. I've been in Creedmoor or Granville County 7 years. I come to Granville County from St. Louis, Missouri. I lived in St. Charles County and was active in the school board when my kids were in school. I've got 4 children from my first wife and 2 children from my second wife. So I've got 6 children, 23 grandchildren, and 7 great-grandchildren. So I'm going to stay involved in schools for a long time. I've got some of my grandchildren are in college right now. I've got 3 of them that's graduated from college so far. My son has graduated from college. Is the only one of my children that have went on to college, and it's been quite successful for him. My interest in the board is not to guide the board, not to direct the board. I want to participate in the board. I want to, be a member of the board to where maybe I can bring some ideas. I've got a couple ideas in my own mind that I will share with you later on. But education is it's so vital to the community. If we don't send our kids to school, or if we don't supervise our kids when I say supervise, I'm talking about keeping them geared to go to further education. Further education is so important. And right now, I look at further education when I say that I'm talking about any kind of training they can get after school, whether it be college, whether it be trade school, something of that nature. But it seems to be that there's been such an emphasis on college that the trades have got lopsided. And so I'm going to share some ideas with the board that I've had as a city commissioner in Creedmoor for the last 4 years, these ideas have been with me for quite a while. I've shared them with some people on the board, I've shared them with the mayor, old and new, and now I'm gonna bring them to the board, and that's my primary interest that I've got here right now.
Second part of my question is, the board has two primary purposes: to set policy and to fire and hire the superintendent. So those are our two things we do. Coming onto the board, how would you basically stay in your lane with that? Knowing that there are other things for you to be involved in, could you come and be a part of just
Well, I
that?
recently lost an election because I fired a city manager. And I didn't fire the city manager by myself. It was one of those things where, you know, it was brought up once before to fire the city manager, and I voted against it. And then the second time around, I brought it up. But there was personal reasons involved. When I say personal reasons, I'm talking about conversations that I had with the city manager. And when he didn't follow through with what he said he was going to do and things of that nature, I went ahead and changed my vote to yes, I fired. But when you talk about firing supervisors and things of that nature, I don't really, I won't say I don't believe in it, but I do think that there's a way that you should be able to compromise. I can only tell you a story about St. Charles Board of Education, St. Charles, Missouri, the county, St. Charles County. And they went through 3 superintendents. And going through 3 superintendents, 2 of them was terminated. And to me, that was wasting taxpayers' dollars, just because, you know, there was under contract. They fired the first one was paid anyway, second one was paid anyway also. And so there was a lot of money being paid for superintendents, and it was cheating the people paying the taxes, the school taxes, and the revenue that goes to the education of our children. And so I don't believe in doing anything of that nature. I think it should be, with the number of people on the board, I think you should be able to work with the board.
Ms. Auburn?
Are you able to commit to the variety of meetings and activities of the board, such as the first Monday of each month is a regular meeting?
Yes,
Also-
ma'am, I see no problems with the first Monday of the month, but irregardless, if we have special meetings and such as this one here tonight, should there be something that comes up, I'm always available. It's, with my 4 years on the city council, I never missed a meeting.
Thank you.
Dr. Hood?
Why do you want to serve on the board?
I've got a selfish reason. My selfish reason is I attended a lot of meetings over the years, and years ago I attended a meeting to where every child in this particular school district was granted a college education. Now that sounds large to do something like that, but they work with the community. And when I talk about a college education, they're not talking about a 4-year education, they're talking about 2 years in junior college. And then should the child want to advance his education from there, he's been guided in that direction. Now, junior college is not the only answer for secondary education. In other words, there's the trade schools and things of that nature. If a child was in school and so desired and carried the academic grades to go to further education, then at that point I wanted to get behind that child and help them go through their education, whether it be through trade schools, welders, machinists, you know, whatever it may be. You know, I would see that they want to go through that school. I've been working on the program now for about 4 years to try to see how we're going to implement it and everything else. Now, to my knowledge, in the United States, there's only 2 communities that provide that type of schooling. And Burleson, Texas is one, and one right here in our own backyard, which is down in Camden, South Carolina. And they just started theirs 3 years ago. The program's up and running, and how would you get the program to run? Taxpayers can't afford to do it. Well, taxpayers would probably vote it down if we took it to the taxpayers. They would say it's up to mom and dad. Well, mom and dad, Yes, but mom and dad's dropped the ball in many cases, so if we don't plant the seed here in their schooling, it may never come up. And, you know, if we go to the community, you know, in Burleson, Texas, for example, it's paid for by the community. The parents pay absolutely nothing, and the school board only backs in or comes in. When I say the school board, I'm talking about the Board of Education. They only step in when they absolutely have to, if there's a special needs situation. It's the only time they ever interfere, and the program works real good. I've been down to Burleson and looked at the program. I haven't been to Camden, South Carolina yet, because that particular program I want to put together with either the board, or I want to try to work with the county and put it together, the county commissioners, and then see if we can do it. With the city of Creedmoor, Creedmoor was light on industry. They don't have too much, what you say, they don't have too much tax base as far as industry is concerned. And that's where a lot of this has to come from, is through programs in the industry such as Revlon corporations, or you could reach out to the community and go to people like Amazon, because they do get involved in community. But that's one of my real drives about education. I want to see that our children get that proper education if we can give it to them. And not everybody being doctors or lawyers or certified PAs. I'd like to see welders, you know, all trades go in there. And we can get that if we work with the kids. I was fortunate in St. Louis where the public high school had 2 programs, and we went through both of those programs. One was a woodworking shop, and we could carry all 4 years of high school going through that woodworking shop. And the other one was an MTO shop, machine tool operation. I am a journeyman tool and die maker from that program. I just don't like to be a tool and die maker. I want to work inside it anymore. But it's, for me, that was, ever since then, that has been one of the drives behind that, my program.
Mr. Udy?
Mr. Anderson, I have a 3-part question. I'll ask one at a time.
Mm-hmm.
What do you hope to bring or add to the board by your appointment?
Well, to sit here and tell you that I want to bring something to the board, I'm going to bring experience from sitting on the council over at Creedmoor. That all by itself is, you know, will have a lot of guidance right there. I don't have any ideas to what I'm going to create here on the board. I definitely not going to come in here and stir up the board. That's, you know, it's just something that right now I want to see what's going on, how the board's working, what the programs are, what you're participating in, and then go from there. When I became a commissioner in Creedmoor, I had one set goal. And I told the people when I ran the first time ago in 2015 that my goal was to protect the money in Creedmoor. In other words, Creedmoor had just come into $15 million, and I wanted to be sure that that $15 million got spent properly, or what something was done with it. First off, they paid off the debt, and then at that point, we used the money to start the community center, finish the sidewalk, and take care of Lake Rogers. All 3 of those programs were put together, not just by myself, but by 3 of the commissioners. And it wasn't what we call the 3 amigos that they called us, but it was by myself, it was through Mrs. Mims and Arthur Wilkins. And us 3, we kind of put the program together. I attended my very first meeting the day I got elected in the city of Creedmoor, Park and Rec. I felt to be involved. And we didn't ask for credit. I told the Park and Rec Committee when I attended that meeting, or any ideas or programs that we had, I asked that it go through the Park and Rec Department, because that was the largest functioning we had in Creedmoor. And I asked that the Park and Rec would get behind these programs, and they did.
Okay. Can you list 2 qualities that a board member should possess?
I didn't hear you.
Could you list 2 qualities that a board member should possess?
Well, she said the first one was, you know, in just being punctual, attend the meeting. In other words, if you're going to commit to do something, then by all means do it. It's a commitment you make to yourself, as well as the people on the board, as well as your neighbors and people that count on you.
And explain,
The second quality, I can only add, say that I've got experience of being on a board, not the Board of Education in Granville County, but I've been on the board serving the local community.
and which one of these do you possess?
Sir,
Which one of these qualities do you possess?
I'd say the latter. I am involved in the community. I talk to the community all the time, whether it's on Facebook or whether it's, my wife won't send me to the grocery store because I'm usually there a couple hours, so I just don't get to go to the store by myself.
Mr. Pease?
Thank you. What do you see as the current challenge? facing-
Sir, I didn't hear you.
What do you see as the current challenge faced by Granville County schools?
Well, the biggest challenge I've got is trying to, get a program that I just shared with you, get a program off the ground and get it going. There's people here in Granville County, last year I sat on the COG, last 3 years, sat on the COG board, and I met some people up there that's interested in the program, so I've got some starts. But the biggest challenge is getting out there and actually doing what will help the community. In other words, it's sometimes we get tied up with ourselves so bad that we just don't reach out to others.
Mr. Anderson, can you explain your passion for children and their education?
Can I explain to what?
Children and their passion for children and their education.
Well, education starts before they ever go to school. In other words, education in my mind has to be from parents that are involved. Now, my mother and father, I've got 7 other siblings, and my mother and father found a way, with only my dad working, to spend time with each and every one of us, to work with each and every one of us. Now, I didn't go to college. I did graduate from high school. All of my brothers and sisters graduated from high school. But Mom and Dad spent time, they showed us best they could show us in their own upbringing to what was right and wrong, what we should do. We went to church on Sundays, and my dad didn't like going to just one church. My dad would attend several churches. So we got to see a different type of religion during our upbringing. And I've been baptized Baptist myself, but my brothers and sisters are different than that. I've got 2 of them that are Catholics, and I've got one that's Pentecostal. So it's, we're all different. But the most important part I see is everything starts at home. And with the working families that we have now, it's real hard to get that upbringing at home. And the kids are turned loose on themselves. That's the sad part about it all.
Ms. Lynn?
What, if any, previous contacts have you had with the Board of Education or its members?
You're talking about the Board of Education. Last board member I spoke to was David, and that was down at Duke Hospital in the lobby. It's, other than that, you and I spoke a few times, and other than that, I've had no contact with the board members. I was going to solicit and call people and ask for their support, but I just really, there's no use doing that. Let's say it that way.
Thank you.
Dr. Maloney?
What is one goal that you'd like to see happen during your time on the board?
I would like to take the program I mentioned to you and make sure that I get it further down the road. That's a program that I was told a long time ago that it's going to take a lot of work, and it will take a lot of work. I have to be able to get that program out into the community. Nobody has ever seen anything in writing or in print on that program, because it's something I don't want to put up false hopes or anything of that nature. So that is the biggest goal that I've got, is to try to further that program, but yet I can't sit here with the Board of Education and jam it down you guys' throat, just for the mere fact that that program is a small program, it's a program for a city. If we can bring it to the county, that's great, but that makes it even harder because there's a lot more people we gotta talk to in the county.
Okay.
Mr. Hudi?
How do you see the relationship between the board and the community?
Well, the board is a vital part to the community. In other words, we have to be visual. In other words, we can't just come to meeting, wait for the newspaper to write our story. We have to be part of the community. In other words, if we don't talk to the people, whether it be at church or the grocery store or on a football field out there, then we're not doing our job.
Mr. Peace?
Yes, sir. What do you see as the roles and relationship of the board and superintendent?
And who?
Superintendent.
When you say superintendent, you're talking about the county officials?
I'm a superintendent of this board.
Dr. McLeod?
The superintendent of the board, I would assume, or I would think, that they should be a part of the board. In other words, I don't care what committee you sit on, you've always got a first chair, second chair, third chair, and treasurer on down the line. There's got to be some type of organization and some type of leadership, whether it would be David there or whoever it would be. We all have to work together, and I'm sure that if there was to be a new superintendent down the road, it would be one of these things that we would all choose our next candidate.
What is your vision for education now and in the future?
Well, education now, there's so much going on in the state of North Carolina when we talk about education. You know, I was taught, and the words were plastered on the wall when we were in school, the 3 R's, reading, writing, and arithmetic. Now they've thrown in, not thrown in, but they've added another one, and some people like it, some people don't like it, and they call it history. Well, all 4 of them are vital to the kids right now. This thing right here hurts a lot of it. We don't have to spell, just ask a little box, it'll tell you how to spell. We don't have to, know how to divide, add, or multiply, the little box will do it for us. So it's important that we get back to basics, though. I mean, the kids have got to understand how we got to that area. In other words, they need to know what's going on in history as well as they need to know how to write. If you look at my application, I was proofreading it before I come over here this evening, and it's bad. I sat there and looked at that, and I can't believe that I typed it, hurried up and drove up here and put it out, at the office over there, without doing a lot of proofreading on it or asking somebody else to do it for me. So those are a lot of things that I didn't get in school. I can tell you right now that I still got Merrimack Elementary report card. That's the elementary school I went to. I still have them at home. And there's a lot of D's on there.
Ms. Lynn?
How best does the board support the vision of Granville County Public Schools and the work we are doing to help our children achieve their goals?
That could be argumentative. Well, Granville County, first off, I'm like a lot of other people in the state of North Carolina, state of Missouri, California, and on down the line, that has passed a lottery system. And the lottery system has come up on the pretext that it helps the schools. Now, the biggest thing that I see as a layman, not being involved in the school boards, is that they buy a lot of land. They build schools. They don't actually put the money in the school. They let mom and dad put the money in the school through taxation, but through the lottery, they're spending the money on land, building schools. Here in Granville County, we're getting ready to close schools. That's unheard of. Take another community, not in North Carolina, but go back to Missouri, Illinois, Arkansas. They're starving to get some schools built. They don't have enough schools. So somewhere along the line, when we built schools, we didn't lay it out right. Or they just bought property, and that's where the property's at, that's where the school's gonna go. I don't know how it worked, but there has to be a lot more planning down the road. In other words, in the city of Creedmoor, when I was first brought into on board in 2015, my very first meeting, we were talking about our 2030 plan. I don't know if the Board of Education has a 2030 plan or a 2040 plan. That's plans you're developing down the road. Those are important. We gotta know where the area is growing. We gotta quit fighting with the city of Raleigh and let the community grow. Otherwise, we're gonna sit here in Granville County and watch everything go to Franklin. It's not gonna come up Highway 50, it's gonna go the other way. We have to work with our communities.
Board members, do you have any other questions? Mr. Anderson, do you have questions for us? Or anything else you want to add?
Well, I would like to ask, which way is the board going now? In other words, do we have any goals that we're trying to reach? Do we have any tunnel vision that we're trying to see which way we want to go?
So we do have a strategic plan that we're working towards. There are 5 areas there. Our main goal for this year is to move the academic needle forward. So everything we are doing, we are pushing towards academics, whether it be reading through our Vision 2020 or whether it be other opportunities to be able to grow that academic needle. So that's where our focus is right now.
You know, I've got a large family. In November, we get together for what we call Thanksgiving dinner. And we all come from all over the place. I mean, I've got sisters in California, brothers in Wisconsin. I've got 2 kids of my own that's out of state. I'm out of state. But we all get together and focus as a family. This last Thanksgiving, there was 100 of us there. Then that's the Anderson Thanksgiving, was 100 people there. Now, with all of those, probably 2/3 are children. And so there's a lot of little ones running around. And my focus on education is when I look at that group of children, I wonder where they're going to be down the road from now. So if we work toward academics and we don't, in other words, I don't want to lose reading, writing, and arithmetic. I know that we have to have the machine here, but we have to teach the basics. Right now, they're talking about the school superintendent, not superintendent, what do they call him? The gentleman up in Raleigh, he's running for lieutenant governor right now. But Mr. Johnson, he lost his core vision. And when he went in 4 years ago, he had a vision. But somewhere along the line, he let something distort it, and he's got other ambitions and things of that nature. So if we can't help our teachers, for example. When I was telling you that we've got a lot of children there, that group, there is probably 13 to 15 school teachers. And each and every year, I'll take 2 of them and send them money to buy school supplies, because I do not feel that they get paid enough, that they have to go buy their own school supplies. I've got a niece and nephew both that are school teachers from the same family, and they're in different school districts, but they have the same problem. And I'm sure our problems are no different than what they have over in Mecklenburg or down in Wake County or anything else. We've all got that same problem, and if we can't work together to solve the biggest problem, and that's standing behind our teachers. I think that we need to stand behind the teachers. If we don't, then we're wasting our time.
Well, we appreciate your time tonight. The way the rest of our night goes, we have one more interview to go. Then our board will deliberate on a decision. Either way, you will hear from us tomorrow about kind of where we are with that.
Well, I would like to take the opportunity to thank each and every one of you for coming out here and giving us the opportunity to come. I didn't figure there would be very many tonight, but it's irregardless of how many there is, it's time out of your own family, and I thank you.
Thank you, sir. Board members, our next candidate's here, so I'll get him and we'll start in just a moment.
Good evening.
Dr. McKnight, thank you for your time tonight. We are glad that you're here. There's a cell phone beside you. We have a board member participating by telephone tonight.
Okay.
So he's listening to what's going on, Mr. Rivers. So the way we'll do this is each of our board members has some questions we'll ask you, about 15 minutes worth. If you need to stop us to clarify anything, by all means, please do that. And once we get finished, there'll be a time if you have any questions for us or anything you want to add to that, you'll have the opportunity for that. So,
Okay.
all right, board members, are you ready? All right. So the first part, I have a two-part question. First, if you tell us your name and why you want to serve on the board.
Gregory McKnight. I would like to serve on the board because I'm very much invested in seeing Granville County Public Schools be successful. I have a daughter that's here in middle school. I have a wife who is also a principal, so I am very hands-on. I'm very involved, and I just see this as an evolution of me moving on to the next step in my career in education, is to see how I can continue to serve and make this be the best district in the triangle.
Dr. McKnight, with your career in education and those kind of things, so the board has two roles. We set policy and we supervise by hiring and firing the superintendent. Those are the two things we're supposed to do. So with your education background, your education experience, other items of your life, how can you best, quote unquote, stay in your lane if you serve on our board?
I think for me, coming on board, the best way for me to stay in my lane is first to actually just stop and listen and learn. That's the first part. And then the second part is to really be more of a support to the superintendent and the staff here. I think that is the role of the board, is to be a support. We hired the superintendent to run the district. And I think the best way we can help her run the district is to get out of her way and just be a support. It's not our business to overstep our bounds and get in the way, because I know that complicates things for them.
Thank you. Ms. Auburn?
Are you able to commit to the variety of meetings and activities of the board, such as the first Monday of every month is our regular meeting, there's work sessions, activities of different schools? Are you able to commit to that schedule?
Yes, I don't foresee that as being an issue. With enough notice well in advance, I have the flexibility to kind of flexible schedule around it.
Thank you.
Dr. O'Loughlin?
Yeah. Why do you want to serve on the board? You mentioned a few things, but why else do you want to serve on the board?
Well, I have a couple of reasons why. One, I feel that democracy is not a spectator sport. I feel like you really have to get involved to make a difference. So you just can't sit on the side and let somebody else make decisions and then you sit back and complain when you didn't, get involved and help out. On a personal note, I think back to my time when I was in high school in Durham. My senior year, if you just allow me to set this up for you, but it was my senior year. I had not decided on college. Most of the people in my family, you went to work. You got a job at IBM or you went to Duke. College was not something that we pursued. There was a student teacher in my English class, and she was from North Carolina Central, and she was telling us all about the Teaching Fellows Program. And that really sparked my interest. And I went to my counselor with the flyer, and I said, I'm really interested in this Teaching Fellows Program. Can you tell me a little bit about it? And she looked at the flyer, and she stood it to the side, and she said,
I think Durham Tech would probably be something more of your speed. So that moment was what motivated me and pushed me in education, because I was going to show my counselor that I could stack up to, 4-year university. I could get a master's degree. I could move on and get my doctorate. And that really drove me, when I got into education, to kind of stand in the gap for students, especially black students. Because with my black males, when I taught middle school, I think back to my time when I was in school, in Durham City School at the time, I could count the number of black male teachers that I had on one hand. That was K-12. So once I became a teacher in middle school, they kind of gravitated to me because there weren't a lot of us there. And I saw the need to really help students, to really kind of guide them. Sometimes a mentor, sometimes I'm a dad, sometimes I'm an uncle to those students, because they didn't have that at home. So from the classroom, I decided to make a greater impact. I needed to go into administration. And then I became a principal. And then from there, I said, well, here's another opportunity to make a bigger impact. And I landed at DPI. And I got to go out and I got to work with educators across the state doing this. And now at SAS, I get to work with educators across the country, in and out of different states, working with principals, use data. How do you, improve your decision making? So for me, it's a way to stand in the gap for those students like me who weren't A students, who weren't on track for scholarships. They were C students, but they were students with a lot of potential. And had I not had that internal motivation, I probably would have just gone to the side and done what everybody else in the neighborhood did. So I just want to stand in the gap.
Mr. Udy?
Mr. McKnight, I have a 3-part question, and I'll ask them one at a time.
Okay.
The first one is, what do you hope to bring or add to the board by your appointment?
I look to bring a different perspective with my experience of being a teacher, an administrator, having spent time at the Department of Public Instruction, working in that environment, being able to bring my experience with using data. That's one of the things I'm well known for. I do a lot of training on how to use data, how to set up decision making, data teams, really getting into the growth data, because that's what I do now. I train on how to use EBOS growth data. So I look to bring that bit of experience to the board.
And the second part is, can you list 2 qualities that a good board member should possess?
Well, off the bat, should have a passion for children and a willingness to serve. I think those are the 2 biggest qualities. If you don't have that, you really don't need to be on the board.
And the third part of that is, explain which one of those you have.
Well, that's a tough one, because I think I have them both. Definitely a passion for kids, though. That's my heart. I step in and I help out where I can. If it's going to benefit kids, I'm all for it. I jump right in there and do whatever I can.
Mr. Peters?
Yes, sir. What do you see as the current challenges facing Granville County Public Schools?
The first challenge I see is competing with charter schools. I think the number of kids that we're losing to charter schools is a bit problematic. And we need to try to figure that piece out. Like, why are they leaving? And then once we figure out why they're leaving, what can we do to offer an experience that they can't get at a charter school to make them come back here? I think the second issue or challenge is probably losing quality educators to like a Wake and a Durham because they pay them. So I know in some of the districts that I've worked in or worked with, that was one of their challenges, is that young teachers come in, they get experience, and then they leave. So we have to figure out how do we, keep them here.
Dr. McKnight, can you explain, you talked about your passion for children. Can you explain your passion for children and their education?
So my passion for children and their education, I have so many stories and experiences that I could draw from. It's a passion to see students succeed and put them in a place where they can win. The experiences that I had as an administrator and as a teacher, I usually worked in high poverty schools with a lot of challenges. The type of challenges that when I was an assistant principal, the bus driver couldn't run the route unless I stood on the bus and rode it with her because the kids fought so much. But it gave me the opportunity to go down to the neighborhood, to meet the parents, to form those relationships. So when I pick up the phone and call, they know it's serious, and the parents would respond. It's that type of passion that allows me to put my arm around the kid and say, okay, you're going the wrong route. We need to change direction and do something different, and they respond. So it's all about relationships. I had a boss who once told me that all work gets done through relationships. So for me, it's the passion to see kids overcome those obstacles and not make excuses for them because they come from a bad situation. But how do you help direct them to overcome that? So I try to instill that in them.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Howard?
What, if any, previous contacts have you had with the Board of Education or its members?
I spoke to Rob Rivers. He introduced himself and just relayed his regrets that he wouldn't be here tonight. So other than that, that's the extent of the contact that I've had with board members.
What is one goal that you would like to see happen during your term, your experience on the board?
Okay. I've got several. I'm going to grab a big one.
Okay, grab a big one.
Okay. I've got this wild idea of starting our pipeline right here in Granville County so that when kids leave, they're going to come back here and teach. Kind of like a teaching fellows, but maybe a Granville promise. And I envision that working with Elizabeth City, Pembroke, and Western University. Because at those promise schools, tuition is only $500 a semester. I think if the board could find the funding, that would be a very inexpensive pipeline to get students to go out, get their degree, and come back to a guaranteed job in Granville County. So for me, if I could see something like that grow, I think that would be awesome for us.
Mr. Udy?
How do you see the relationship between the board and the community?
Well, I think there's a bit of a perception that it's been a bit adversarial and a possible disconnect. Because from what I've heard in the community from some folks is that current board members don't necessarily have children here in the board. So you're making decisions or you're making policies that don't necessarily impact you. Whereas someone like me who's a parent, the decisions that I make, the policy decisions that I would be a part of, I have to think of how does this impact parents? Because it would impact me. I think that's the biggest thing that the community is seeing, and I think that's a perception that needs to change, maybe more visibility, maybe a better explanation of what it is we do and how we support the district.
Mr. Peace?
What do you see as the role and relationship of the board and the superintendent?
Role and relationship with the board and superintendent. I think the board should take on a supportive role of the superintendent. I don't necessarily think the board is here to be a yes man or rubber stamp everything you want to do. I think the board has to do its due diligence and you call into question. You try to look for the pitfalls. You kind of do the guide rails to help. But I think we stay out of the way and we let them do their job and just support them in any way we can. So it's one of a supportive role, kind of speaking truth to power. We have to be the ones to stand up and say, maybe we should rethink this, or maybe we're moving too slow, or maybe we need to over-communicate something. So I think that's the board's job, is to call into question some things.
Dr. Menard, what's your vision for education now and in the future?
My vision for education now, I'd really like to see people really like to dig into technology a lot and talk about having kids having skills and push technology. But I think we've gotten to the point now where technology is driving education, and I think it needs to be the other way around. Technology needs to support the education. So my vision is that students will get a sound, basic education with the fundamentals, and we enhance it with technology to prepare them for roles that don't exist right now. I don't know about you, but when I was in school, I would have never thought that you could make a living off of playing video games, or even designing video games. I see that North Carolina Central is starting a new degree in creating video games. So I think part of that vision is, first, they need to have that sound basic education enhanced by technology to prepare them for roles that don't exist yet. And in the future, they need to be able to apply that to situations that may come up. I know, for one, the job that I'm currently in, I did not go to school for. But I think I was prepared to be able to flex into that role. So there needs to be education that allows them to flex and to adapt.
Ms. Oliver?
How best does the board support the vision of Granville County Public Schools and the work we are doing to help our children achieve their goals?
Well, it's always about following the dollar. So I think the way we could best support the district, support those goals, is to really push and advocate for funding and resources to make sure they're being allocated properly. I know that, God knows, there's a huge need just at Creedmoor, and I can speak about Creedmoor because I'm on the PTA, but they could really use instructional coaches, could use someone to help translate, have a high Hispanic population. There are also other issues that I'm well familiar with from being in schools of high poverty, where we have a lot of kids with other issues that teachers did not go to school for, to deal with, that are more in the mental challenges or mental health areas. And we really need people on district to deal with that, especially at the elementary level, because a lot of times there's really nowhere for them to go when these kids are out of control or hard to rein in. So support and funding, finding the resources.
Board members, do you have other questions for Dr. Ryan?
I do, but I don't know how to ask.
We'll just let her rip and let's see what happens.
Maybe.
Well, I guess,
Eva will correct you.
Yeah, Eva will stop us.
I guess the best way is just to explain that being on the school board, my wife used to be a teacher. And one of the biggest obstacles I had is that she was constantly getting blamed for saying things to me about the school system, when in fact she was not the one saying it. I was getting my information from other schools, other teachers in the elementary area, along with, well, some of the board members will tell you I had it all the way up here at Oxford. I guess my question is, how would you handle that with your wife being an educator here in Granville County? If people start saying, you're the fault that this got to the board or something like that.
Yeah, that is one that I thought about. That's going to be one that's just going to have to be dealt with on a situation, case by case basis. I would approach it very carefully. I would try to definitely remain, transparent and above reproach when it comes to anything, dealing with school personnel or things that come back. If it's, Creedmoor related or anything that she's involved in, I would definitely confer with the board attorney, and if I need to recuse myself from, being involved in whatever, conversation is. It's interesting because I do hear a lot sometimes, not necessarily from her, but from people in the community, from parents, from next door, of all places. We get to PTA meeting, Sometimes you fight the urge to respond and correct people. So sometimes you just have to let it be. Sometimes the best way to respond to something is not to respond. Don't add fuel to the fire. You just kind of let it fan itself out. So it's a tough one.
Board members, anything else? Dr. McKnight, do you have questions for us or anything else you'd like to add?
Yes.
Okay.
How does the board support professional learning in the district? Professional learning for all the educators.
Oh, I like how all y'all look at me all the time. So we're making sure that with supporting who we do have in professional development, supporting our executive staff to do that. Actually, we have the opportunity to sit in some of those sessions sometimes to make sure that that's going on and that even we're abreast of what's going on. I've sat in a couple of EVOS trainings myself to make sure I understand when they come back to us with stuff that we're understanding. So basically supporting our staff to do that, but also learning and knowing what's going on as well.
Let me jump up in with you on that one. I think the main thing to point out in relation to this question is that the board has two legal responsibilities, and that's it. And that is to hire and fire the superintendent and to set policy. And so in terms of professional development, we hold the superintendent accountable in her evaluation for the goals of the system. This year we have one goal, and that's student performance. So when it comes to things like professional development, we don't tell her what to do. Sometimes I'd like to, but I know she wouldn't listen to me. So that's her job, and we hold her accountable for results. And so that gets back to your professional development, and she's the one.
You mentioned policy is one of the main responsibilities of the board. And I do believe every organization should be some type of learning organization. So if you guys were to reflect back on some past policy decisions, is there any one policy that you might redo if you had a chance, like you maybe think back in hindsight that maybe we should have handled it differently?
I could say that the board revisits those policies sometimes because we have more information at a later date. So I would definitely say yes, that there are times that we go back and have to make a change by learning things. Yes, sir.
A lot of our policies are already decided by the state, and ours just mirror it. And I think what he's talking about is sometimes what they set for us just doesn't fit when we implement it. And we have to go back and tweak it when we see the problem area.
And I might add that you certainly have differences of opinion about starting policies or just tweaking them to some degree. And that's really bringing about some interesting and good discussions about how we should run this show.
Okay. And just one more here. I don't know if this is something maybe you guys talked about before, but how does the board plan to maybe improve the perception of their roles and responsibilities for student community? Change that there.
So I think one of the things we're doing as a board is some of the perceptions about our board come from the way we operate as a board. And so one of the things we're even working on currently is we're working on some board procedures on how we operate as a board, how we function with one another, that are a little easier to manipulate and be malleable than policy, but just how we as a board are going to operate together. So that's the one thing. Second thing is just making sure that we're all singing from the same hymn book, basically. That when we decide something as a board, we have this conversation. Sometimes we wrestle against each other. We have differences of opinions. But once we're done and we've set our direction, that's the direction we're going. And that we operate as one body. It's a one board concept. That none of us function as one person. We have to function as the board. And our goal is to make sure, we even talked about at the beginning of this meeting, we're supposed to empower children every day. And we're supposed to do things in the best interest of children. Every decision we make around this table, we need to do that. And that's one thing that, at least at the time I've been here, I think we've tried to narrow our focus. And in the 3 years I've been involved, is that we are doing what's best for children, supporting our staff and our superintendent, so that we can be the very best place. We are the choice of education in Granville County, not just a choice.
That's all I have.
All right. Anything further? All right. Well, we thank you for your time.
Thank you.
The way this is going to kind of play out is our board will deliberate after we're done with you tonight. And then you will hear from us either way tomorrow of what kind of decision we came to. But we definitely appreciate your time. We appreciate the commitment you have to Granville County Schools that we see from your resume. And just thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Take care.
All right, board, we've had the opportunity to interview our three candidates. Just a reminder from what we discussed earlier tonight, how we will do this is we will deliberate now. This happens in open session, and we'll kind of discuss what direction we want to take as a board. And the way we see it is we have two options right now. That we have the option to choose one of these candidates, and that would come from a motion from one of you. Or we would choose to not choose one of these candidates and start the process all over again based on what we did. And I did throw out, there was the other question about would we possibly move this to another night because you wanted time to reflect. Again, that can be done by a motion from one of you. We did advertise that tonight was the night we would make that decision, but that can be changed by you. So what I want to do is kind of open up the floor for comments, questions, concerns. Again, remember that this is...
Mr. Rivers.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, remember this is open session. So, all right, who would like to start?
Let me ask a couple clarifying on one of the recommendations for Mr. Anderson. Is there a page missing? The written statement. So did it just end right there?
I think it just ended right there. The best I've gone back and looked at it, I did not see any other piece. It doesn't. It appears to be someone from his hometown, I believe, by the context of it. But the original we got was just a plain notebook piece of paper. It didn't have a second sheet. So what else do you have to say or think?
I don't think we need to go on this thing until the next meeting. I don't know if anything that could happen between now and then that would make us go somewhere that we're not thinking about going right now. That's just my opinion.
Well, I'll get it started. I think we have three candidates that are very, very impressive in terms of their interest in serving on the school board. Of the three, the one that sticks out to me is Dr. McKnight. Obviously, his background, his knowledge, his skills would bring an enormous positive to the board. And the fact that he has children in school is very important. And Madam Attorney, may I say the following?
I don't know what it is, so.
You're really on the spot here.
The concern, and I think all of us know what it is can he, with a principal in the school system, how would that play out? And how would all of that in terms of excluding himself from items involving his wife and all that? I mean, it's just, Danny's wife, teacher, when I was whatever, it was, same thing. But this is the principle of, it's, I think, frankly, I just think we need to talk about it. If there is interest in it.
But Tom, I was sitting here thinking about how many times as a board, we've always had members of the board that had family or, I don't know, a principal being involved. But I don't see it would be any different from a teacher and I just don't, I don't remember any times when there was a don't think that would be, in my mind, something that if, you know, that was the person that would, I would not vote with that person based on that kind of a fact, because I don't think it would come up that often.
So one of my concerns, by far and large, I mean, he rose to the top with his education, his experience, his recommendations. His obvious passion for helping children, I mean, that's very key to me. The one thing I would have a concern would be not even dealing with the fact of him being involved with decisions with his wife, but just making sure that his relationship as a board member with the superintendent, who is his wife's supervisor, that we would protect that. I think there would need to be some very frank conversation, and that we as a board police ourselves to make sure that if we ever saw it drifting in that lane, that we have that conversation. But I also would expect that that would be the same conversation we would have with any of us. If any of us saw another one kind of drifting out of our lane, and we've done that before, that somebody's kind of drifted out and we've kind of brought them back. So I think it would take a commitment from the board, should we choose to go that direction, that we would be willing to do that. He talked about speaking truth to power, making sure he could accept truth to power. That there would be some times that just either he wouldn't be part of a decision, or B, just making sure that in the vein it's staying in the lane as a board member. So that's kind of my take, is I think it can be done, but I think we need to make sure we're diligent about making sure it's done the right way. And I'll tell you, I'll go ahead, sir.
Kim, I'm sorry, I can't see you, so I hope I'm not interrupting. If I could, my comments on that are sort of like, I like to echo sort of what you said. We have had examples. I mean, there was a case when Donnie Boyd was chairman of the board, and we were considering, the board was considering buying rings for the state softball championship, South Temple High School girls team, on which his daughter served. And so that was clear conflict of interest, and he recused himself. School Board 101, basically went over a lot of issues about conflict of interest, and recusal is the solution. I agree, and you brought up, I think, the most cogent point, and that is that his wife supervised by the superintendent, whom he supervises through the board as a corporate whole. So I think I agree with you that we would need to be somewhat careful here, and I think refusal at times would be probably the ethical thing to do. However, I think all three candidates bring a lot of different experience to the board. Certainly, Mr. Anderson having school board experience, Ms. Taylor with her tremendous amount of volunteer work and IEP experience is crucial. And then, of course, Dr. McKnight, but he also brings something extra in his efforts with staff, where he has a more national stage where he can, leverage that to give us information and help us. It's just another part of the experience that adds to our total board culture and our diversity of experience. So I think if we want to consider him, I think it's easy ways to handle the conflict of interest, and I would not want to see that as a reason for us not to pick him if that's where we want to go.
So just to give you some background, you saw the email we got from our attorney researching what the general statute has to say about conflicts of interest. And it appears, if I'm correct, that this probably doesn't fall into that, with the exception of, we don't even approve principal contracts, do we? We do. So that would be something that he would need to recuse himself for.
Principal contracts, I'd say principal reassignments. We probably want to draw a line about that.
I reached out to the School Board Association to find out their kind of take on the deal as well from a practicality standpoint. And Janine Murphy, we had conversation about it, we talked about it. What we kind of ended with was technically in 2 years he could run for this seat and there would be nothing we could do about it. With the same parameters of the recusing himself when it came to Ms. McKnight. So that's a factor to take into consideration as well.
Well, he would certainly bring a lot to the board.
He checks off a lot of boxes.
He sure does.
I'll just be, I'll put it out there. The second candidate, I don't know that it would bring a lot to the table. I think our first candidate would bring the experience of a parent to the table.
I think the part you're gonna get more of a common sense type way of looking at things, which is good sometimes. It gives you a different perspective than straight bookwork. And I think that's where Mr. Knight is. He's got a lot of experience with the education system, so he's gonna be looking at it from an experience point where she would be looking at, well, this is common sense, should we do this or maybe go the other way? And that's really the only two difference I see there.
So do we have a feel of someone wanting to put a motion on the floor, or do you still have some unanswered questions?
I'll make a motion to, what's the right wording? Appoint Dr. Gregory McKnight as a board chair from District 5.
All right, so we have a motion by Dr. Houlihan. Do we have someone that is willing to second that motion? Mr. Udy? All right. What further discussion do you want to have?
I just wanted to ask where we are on closing a school in that district, because if Creekmore Elementary is still under consideration for being closed, or we passed that now?
So officially in our studies, can you tell us where we're at?
Yes, sir. I believe this question was asked recently by someone.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's still an active study.
So the study is that we were considering closing a Southern End Elementary School.
Which is in his district?
Yes.
Okay. Or in all three of them's district?
Right.
But he has a vested interest in Creekmore.
All right. What other further questions, discussion? Okay. Hearing none other, are you ready to vote? All right. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed? Okay. So it passes. Do we count his? Okay, so it passes 6-0. All right, so I will work with Dr. McLean and Ms. Pettaway to communicate that with those candidates. And we will extend an invitation to Dr. McKnight, and we will plan his swearing-in ceremony for the March board meeting. All right. Any further information or questions, concerns about District 5? Dr. Wimber, we'll work together to make sure we get that out and communicate that. And we look forward to having a full board. All right, so moving forward in our agenda, we have 2 items left. House Bill 75 required reporting. Ms. Day and Dr. McClain.
Absolutely. Bring forward this to the board. This was required reporting that came to us, and certainly last week we finally got the data. The date by which I had to get this to you was the 15th. This is a superintendent's requirement to get it to the Board of Education by the 15th. So we put it in board docs to you and did not know if you had questions. This is the PowerPoint in the back of your folder. It is a PowerPoint. This is the data on our mental health providers. You may recall mental health. There wasn't much change, but it is a requirement where I have to update you each year by the 15th. Are there any questions? Hasn't anything made? Anything, Beth, you'd like to add? Just wanted you to see what we went on behalf of our district.
So the points out we need.
Points out we need it. Absolutely.
So board, any further questions about that? All right, now we'll go to Dr. Winborn with the facility update.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. So tonight, excuse me, I'm having trouble locating the document. I wanted wanted to update you that we did receive an offer to purchase Joe Toller Oak Hill. However, it is not very high. The offer is $28,000. And this was from the individual who was out of state. So,
And so board members, you don't have to, when you get an offer, you can accept it and start the upset bid process, but you don't have to. You can just go back to this person and say, thanks, but we're not going to start the process at that point. If you want to come back to us with something closer to the range. And the superintendent doesn't have to, like, if he comes back with 30, she doesn't have to keep bringing each one to you. We wanted to bring you this first one and sort of get a sense. Or you can start the bidding and see what happens. But it has not been listed for that long.
What was this, goes about half, what was that?
No.
Not quite.
It's not even,
Not even half.
450 is the appraised value,
And it was, how much was it?
28,000.
Oh, okay.
I don't know that that would cover Eva's legal bills for this right now.
It won't.
Not to put you on the spot
That's all
there.
right.
Well, at least we have an offer, look at it that way.
That's right.
That means they're gonna be coming in all directions.
So board, do we feel the consensus that you are not willing to entertain this offer, or would you like to make a motion?
Not willing to be.
Okay. All right, Dr. Winmore, if you and Dr. McLean will communicate that back to the bidder. And,
so that brings me to my next point as it relates to the Toller property. I've been approached by Century 21, the agency which helped us sell both of our other properties at a good price. And they would like to represent us and be our agent on this as well. So I thought I would bring this to you to see what your thoughts were. They generally take a 10% commission, but on the other two properties, they took a cut at 8%, and they would like to meet with me to negotiate a new proposal on the arrangement for the Toller property. So I know at our last meeting, you had directed me to just sort of handle things, but I do see that there would be some benefits from actually getting this into the MLS system. And Century 21 has a national database as well, so it would raise the profile and get that marketing machine going. So just wanted to get your thoughts and direction on that.
board members, what are your,
Would it be the same realtor?
Yes.
It seems to me that that's something that staff should do. You go with it, we didn't even know what you did on the other two properties, did we?
well, but I think we directed him, though, to have it listed with a commercial real estate agent, didn't we?
Yes, sir. And I guess the reason I'm bringing this to you tonight is because at the last meeting you had directed me to just proceed on my own.
That's true.
But given that they're willing to maybe negotiate on the terms of their being a realtor, I could explore that and move forward.
Would we be willing to direct Dr. Winborn in a direction there?
I think it would be a good idea for us to deal with the realtor. Because you get more interest out of state and make it a higher price than you get in state.
Anybody else have any thoughts?
The fact that they are willing to negotiate should mean something.
I mean, this-
Should mean that they should might be able to get less than 8.
This, this type of deal should be less work for them because we handle a lot of the closing type stuff and the contracts. Because once you get the bid and we start getting into the bids, there's not necessarily as much of a role for a realtor. So that was a good reason for them to, and now she understands the bidding process a little better.
Would we be willing to direct Dr. Winborn to negotiate 8% or lower for commission and to go with them if that's the case?
5% to me.
Well, I would love that.
Drive a hard bargain.
Sounds like we
She
should
needs to negotiate.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so Dr. Winborn, if you'll negotiate on our behalf for that and have that listed.
Okay. And then just one final option, I wanted to let you know that at the March meeting, I will bring to you a letter which hopefully will bring to a close the matter of the lawsuit for the roof repairs at Granville Central. And Ms. Dubison's colleague, Rod Malone, is preparing that document. So that will require approval or signature, I'm not sure, but it, you should.
I think they just, is this the letter that they wanted to show that there was no outstanding obligation?
And to terminate the suit, I guess.
Yeah, I think it was, I think it'll be just an information item. I think they just wanted confirmation that things are resolved, that they can show to other people that they want to do business with, who might have heard that there was a problem.
Good news is that the building has been dry as a bone despite all of these heavy rainstorms. So, and the final inspections by REI were very good. Our man, Jack Blackwell's been on the roof. He says it looks fantastic. They did a very, very good job. He even did the landscaping where they left tracks, in the grass. So it's like they weren't there.
Any questions for Dr. Wentworth regarding that?
I got a question about the Joe Hole property. Is there any more interest from any other people, other than the one who gave the $28,000?
I haven't gotten any other formal bids. I did reach out to the gentleman, the local person who first approached us, and he told me he would be back in touch, but not sure. It's hard to gauge.
So I read locally that we had talked about possibly Oxford Prep being one of the bidders. From my understanding, according to the newspaper, they have bought property beside them and have now began the process of installing modular units to take care of their issue. So I feel like they will not be a bidder for us at this point, but they found a solution to their problem.
Well, that's really nice.
All right, anything further for the staff? All right, so you see your dates to remember there. Please make sure you put on your calendars for our March board meeting and the work session. We did move the Mary Potter discussion to the March board meeting, so we'll have that along with the other things we discussed. March work session, if you remember correctly, we will discuss the draft board procedures as well as the superintendent's evaluation for mid-year. And we will also finalize training, so kind of come with your thoughts of what you're willing. We don't want to plan things and pay for things if you're not able or willing to come to them. So we want to make sure that we're there for that. Anything else from any other board members?
Yes.
Okay.
That reality of money, that was amazing. I was very impressed with that. State Police Credit Union, right?
Yes.
They did a phenomenal job putting that on. And those kids seemed to have light bulbs going off in their head when they were coming by to talk about buying cars and all kinds of things. So anyway, if you have not participated in that, the next one's March 5th.
We have our last one, March 5th at Granville Central. You can do half a day or no, full day. You're right, it's incredible. I've talked about it before. I had one kid, you work transportation, I worked housing. I had one kid that told me he wasn't living with his parents, and then came back a few minutes later after he budgeted and said he was moving back in with mom and dad. So it became very apparent quickly how quickly those dollars go.
I had a young girl who was in her situation. She was supposed to have been married with 2 children, and she said her husband could watch her. So.
So it is a very engaging thing. I think it's a great preface to what may happen with our financial literacy that's coming later on through the State Department. But yeah, it's a very good thing. And I'm sure Mr. Rodenbacher would appreciate some more help if you're able to be there for that.
I can share the link if you would like. I want to register. I can share the link.
If you'll do that, yeah. All right, Mr. Uding?
Well, I was going to bring it up, but Dr. Hoover is passing it out.
But this is really not a item, it's just, we know the liaison committee is going to be meeting, and I thought maybe you all would like to see something that was posted on Facebook. We don't know what it means, right?
Yeah, I was done, yeah.
So anyway, I just thought you would like to see that. Maybe a tough year.
David?
Yes, sir.
If you don't mind, I'm gonna need to go ahead and check out. I've got to down the road.
Okay, all right. Thank you, sir, for your participation.
Thank you so
So we moved our liaison meeting. It was originally the middle of March. We moved it up to the 24th so that we can talk with them and have some communication before our March meeting. Maybe time to have a conversation about this during that meeting, to kind of figure out what his feelings are and why we feel that way. So
He's still a little bit,
he is, him and Dr. Kozar are. We'll definitely do that.
all right.
All right, anything further? Dr. McLean, anything from you?
No, I'm just grateful. The reality of money, Dr. Myrick and Tamara Rotenbaugh and the CTE team could really use your help. It is incredible. They task me with being the bad guy. I get to go around and give the card of how life happens, and it breaks my heart to say, you have to pay for a hairdo, or your rent is late, or something, give them the card. I'm like, I don't know who to give it to. It just breaks my heart, because they have to figure out life. But isn't that life? Your refrigerator broke, so you owe this, and do you do this, or do you pay your rent? And they have to figure it out. But it is incredible. We'd love more help, but the community has been incredible. We're not complaining at all. It's incredible. It really is. So, do come have fun.
I was asked earlier today, you probably heard the news, we have a state girls wrestling champion at South Granville. She will be here in March for you to congratulate her. Outstanding young lady. When I was at South Granville with the Reality of Money, I was able to go meet her. Some of you have asked about the championship room. Because it's only one of them, the school was able to take care of that for her. They were designing it with some bling, I was told.
Some bling, I hope.
So they were taking care of that. And also, you probably saw Dr. Winborn's email about the South Granville Central game this past Friday. It was televised. A great crowd, the community come out and supported that. Yeah, it was a great game.
On TV.
It was on TV, that's right.
That's great.
So athletics have done well the last couple of weeks for us.
We have another big game Wednesday night in our community. Our kids are doing great.
Being that Teresa Baker is going to be honored as one of the women who make a difference in Granville County, is there any possible way we could have Teresa come to one of our upcoming meetings just to talk to us a little bit about what it is that she does and why she makes such a big difference, and maybe shed some light on her programs?
That would be great. I'll be happy to add her to the March agenda. I know it's a Saturday. I'd certainly plan to go, but any of you, it will really surprise her.
Oh, yeah.
For our board to go and to support her. That'll be nice. Let's add her to the March agenda if she's available that night.
I'll be going with Dr. McLean to that, so if you do want to go, please let Ms. Pettaway know.
And in the morning, we're going to Eggs and Issues.
Yes, in the morning.
Is that right? We're doing that 7:30 a.m. Eggs and Issues for the state. So,
Dr. Mayborn, can you tell me how the voting's going for Kobe Jones? I know he's down to the last 12 in the nation.
Yes, I'm not sure. I don't have access to that.
Well, I know you sent us the...
Yeah, that was from Coach McDaniel, I believe, right? Is that who sent that to me?
Yes.
Regarding, it was a high school dunk contest.
Dunk contest or something.
He's in the last
I
round.
voted.
Yeah.
He's in the last
Oh, yeah.
round, and if he wins this round, he'll go to the quarterfinals.
I think so.
Maybe we could resend the link. Can we do the link again?
Sure.
Try to help them out.
Yeah, I've had people ask me because they said it's not on the South Granville website. So,
At least I'll put that back up.
so what parents have started doing is they are getting up the link and they're starting to send it out, but if we had it on our website, I could tell them, to go there.
We can do that. We can get it up.
Because I think that's
That's a
pretty
big
good honor.
deal.
It's called the high school slam dunk 3-point,
That's right. That's a big deal.
and the video on there is awesome.
It's crazy. Wish I had those skills, Mr. Reed.
To me, he reminds me of David Thompson. with his jumping skills.
Where is he? Is he in Campbell?
Because he'll jump about 3 or 4 foot higher than the goal. He can get up there.
Where is he? Is he in Campbell?
South Granville. He's a South Granville student.
Our student is in South Granville.
Okay.
All right, if nothing else, we'll take a motion to adjourn.
Motion?
Motion by Mr. Udy, second by Mr. Peace. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed. All right.